It was in March of 2000 when Sony released the PS2 console to Japan for a price of $299. It was then released for the rest of the world between October and December of 2000. From day one, the PS2 was a phenomenal commercial success since it sold over $250 million worth of consoles, games, and accessories, again, all on day one. Indeed, it was so popular that consumers were willing to pay over $1,000 on eBay just so they could have the PS2 in time for the Christmas season. Today, the PS2 console has achieved the best-selling console status of all time. It has sold over 155 million units worldwide, with a staggering 3,800 games produced for the console. Not only was the PS2 compatible with PS1 games, but it also included a built-in DVD player, making it a low-cost entry into the home theater market. Due to its sophisticated emulation engine CPU and its graphics synthesizer, the PS2 was capable of generating 3 million to 16 million polygons per second in real-world performance. Some of its classics and best-selling games include Grand Theft Auto series, Gran Turismo 3 and 4, Final Fantasy 10 and 12, Metal Gear Solid 2, Tekken 6, and God of War 2. In this tutorial, you will learn how to configure the PS2 emulator found in Batocera. Tips will also include how you can boost performance. Are you ready? Let's do it. Greetings everyone, and welcome to Batocera Nation. So glad that you can join us. So as promised, today we're going to go back to emulation. My goal is to try to cover all the main emulators for Batocera. So a good place to start for PS2 is to go to the wiki page on the Batocera website. And I will be providing a link to all these tabs you see there on my screen. So the game extensions that PS2 emulation will accept are these right here, okay? Among all these, the best compression that you will find is for the chats. And in fact, if you have your PS2 games in one of these formats, highly encourage you to go ahead and convert it to a chat format so that you can save space on your hard drive. And indeed, I have a tutorial on how to do that. How to compress your games for retro consoles. So I highly encourage you to look at that video and I'll teach you how to compress your games. Now then, you will be needing the BIOS for the PS2 emulator. And if you're not seeing this one, how to install Batocera 31 to PC, that will give you a link where you can find all the BIOSes for all the game systems for Batocera 31. So I highly encourage you to watch that as well. Now that I can't tell you where to find the games, but Google is your friend. Okay, this talks about the controls. And now we're going to performance. You're going to need a pretty powerful CPU, even a good GPU to play PS2. It's one of the most difficult game consoles to emulate. So, therefore, I highly also encourage you to go to the wiki page for the actual emulator itself, because this will tell you which games are the playable games, okay? And not only will it tell the playable games, but it will even tell you some of the settings that you can use to get the game up and running and what kind of CPU and GPU that you need. For example, Escape 2. So it will show you that bare minimum for CPU, you're going to need a Ryzen 5 2600, okay, to get the game playing at 60 frames per second. And these things tend to change in terms of the progression of the emulator, all right? And we also have a category of broken games. There's a bunch of them there. So these games, no matter what you do, they're not going to work. So don't even bother. These are just simply not going to work until the emulator progresses. Here's also a list of games that don't require a high CPU, okay? So these are for the weaker PC systems you may have. So if you have a weak Batocera system, I highly encourage you to check out these games to test it out on your Batocera system. Here's a list of the most GPU intensive games for the PS2 emulator. Okay, these require a powerful system. And again, I will be providing links to all these pages. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and turn on Batocera system so I can show you where to copy your games. All right, so we are within the file manager of Batocera, and once you got your PS2 games, go into this folder and go into PS2 and copy them here. Okay, I've got them linked from this particular hard drive in this example. Okay, if you want to know how to link things, I have a video tutorial about how to add multiple hard drives to your Batocera system, so look for that video. In fact, I think I'll link it at the conclusion of this video. Alright, so once again it's been copied, just go ahead and go to File, close Windows, and make sure that once you copy your games to your folder that you go into Start, Game Settings, Update Games List. Alright, now let me go ahead and show you the computer I'm running this on. I'm running this on my AMD 4800U mini computer, ASRock mini computer. Now I've noticed that this PS2 emulator plays much better with the ASRock i7-1165G7, which is the other testing computer that I have. But for this particular tutorial, I'm going to play around with this AMD 4800U chip. Alright, so let's go in there and let's go down to God of War. Now that most of these games play really well in 720p, but I want to push it further. I want to see if I can bring some of these games to the 1080p level. So press back on your gamepad and go into Advanced System Options. And these are different options that you can choose, okay? And so graphics backend is always going to be OpenGL, all right? For Show BIOS Boot Logo, go ahead and leave it on auto. I mean, you could turn it off if you want to, but some games will not boot, will not run unless the BIOS is able to boot. So just go ahead and leave it on auto. Here's what you change for the in terms of resolution. You've got the lowest resolution, 640, and then of course 720, and so forth all the way to 5K. Okay. So again, we're going to try to push this to a 1080p level. And also you can change this as well, but we're going to leave that off for the time being. We also have Skip Draw Hack, which is frame skipping, okay? And some of the games may actually help out. Some of the slow games may actually help out. One or two is what I usually tend to use. If you use a high number, it doesn't look good at all, okay? And this one you would definitely turn on for Soul Calibur. This one you need a heavy CPU in case you have a game that has screen tearing, game cheats, widescreen patches, automatic game fixes, leave it on auto, and these also leave it on auto. All right. Now you can also select individual games. So let's say, for example, you got the whole system set to 1080p, but there's a game there that just doesn't work. You can bring down that game to 720p, and only that game or a group of games. So go ahead and press A button, hold it down, go to Advanced Game Options, and here you can choose, you know what, this game works good at 720p. Okay, and of course you can also change these settings as well for every individual game. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and test 3 games in particular: God of War 1, God of War 2, and Shadow of the Colossus. Let's go ahead and test in 1080p default settings, just to give you a glimpse of how everything works in default settings at 1080p.
By defeating Ares, Kratos, the once mortal warrior, became the new god of war. However, Kratos soon found himself alone on Olympus, shunned by his fellow gods.
Athena! You will suffer for this! Don't let him open the door! Don't let him through!
All right, so the last game we're going to test out is Shadow of the Colossus. Okay, for this one, let's go ahead and hold the A button. That brings us a extra menu here. Go into Advanced Game Options. And for this one, this works. Skip, draw, hack, okay? Just try one. All right, let's see how it plays. 1080p. As you can see, the gameplay wasn't all that good for 1080p on this AMD 4800U chip. So let's see if we can improve performance. So let's go ahead and press Escape, press F1, and let's go into Applications, and let's go into the PS2 emulator right here. All right. So go to Config, go to Video, go to Core GS Settings. I played around with this, okay, and I didn't see much of improvement. Now when it comes to this right here, here's where I see an improvement, okay? Bring it down one. And it says here, 75% cycle rate. Slight reduction in CPU requirements, speed up for less demanding games, slows down others, okay? My experience has been that -1 actually helps out, all right? But you may want to leave a default setting. We're going to go ahead and put it at -1. Apply. Okay. Then go back to Config and go into Video GS and go into Plugin Settings. I've also noticed that these settings here do work in terms of changing things, all right? So for rendering settings, for the GPU, you have a really good GPU, go ahead and click on that. If you have a really good CPU and not so much a good GPU, then go ahead and deselect it, okay? And here's where I see some improvements right here. Bit mapping, just go ahead and turn it off. CRC hack level, you can see there that's going to help out a number of games. There's several games including God of War 1 and 2 and Shadow of the Colossus and a number of other games. So go ahead and put it to aggressive. Blending accuracy. Notice too that sometimes you put it on non, it does speed things up a little bit. All right. So those are the 3 settings that I play around with. You can play with some of the other settings as well, including here as well. I tried different things here, but I couldn't see any improvement in speed. All right. But again, these 2 settings here, these 2 tabs, you can change things for the PS2 emulator. All right. So let's go ahead and now try things out. Close it. go back to the PS2, and let's go back to Shadow of the Colossus. As you can see, there's definitely an improvement in performance. Whether it's playable at 1080p, well, that's up to you. 720p definitely is much better. Now let's go to God of War 2.
By defeating Ares, Kratos, the once mortal warrior, became the new god of war. However, Kratos soon found himself alone on Olympus, shunned by his fellow gods.
Athena! You will suffer for this! Don't let him open the door! Let him through!
Alright, so you can see there, not only is there an improvement in performance, but the graphics even improve as well. So there's 2 pluses right there. Now let's go to God of War 1. And as you just saw, this indeed had the best performance increase compared to the other 2 games. It plays perfectly at 1080p now. So once again, for the settings, you can go ahead and play around with this right here. Okay. Or individual games, hold down the A button, go into advanced game options, mess around here. And of course, the biggest improvement you'll see is by going to the applications and going to the config, going to video, plugin settings, and play around with these things here. You can also play the settings right here. And of course, the last one is in speed hacks. This one right here. Okay? Alright. So that's what you got to do. I have one last tip. If you try to exit your game right in the middle of the gameplay, like God of War 1, there's a very good chance that your Batocera system will freeze. Therefore, to prevent this, pause the game first and go to the game's menu screen. Any menu screen will do, like the one you see on the screen right now. And from there, exit the game using your hotkey and your start key. Again, this will prevent your Batocera system from freezing. Okay, so that is a wrap. If you found this video useful, please go ahead and like it. If you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing. I've got a lot more tutorials coming up. In fact, my next tutorial is going to be on PSP emulation, so you don't want to miss it. Stay tuned. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time on Batocera Nation. Bye.